I'll say hi. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you, thank you. I work off the energy of the crowd, so I need you like this. My name is Ken Mosesi, and I'm Executive Director at the American Fertility Association. I want to tell you just a little bit about what we do. I'll introduce Corey Whalen and tell you about her role, introduce a few other guests in the room today, and then we'll begin. Today's hour is all interactive, so I would invite your questions at any point during the presentation. We're really here for you, we're here to be a resource, and we want to hear what's on your mind, the questions that you have, and serve you in the best way that we can. Just want to call out that we got a couple of things for you. It's our Fertility and Adoption Directory on CD over on the desk, and we've also got this great brochure, Infertility Prevention Handbook, that you guys are welcome to take several copies of and distribute to people that you may know for whom this could be of use and benefit.
The disc is actually a 160-page book.
Yes.
And it's all articles on infertility, various aspects of it, so it really is worth your while to grab one.
And it also contains, as the title implies, a directory of physicians, healthcare professionals in the areas of fertility and infertility that can be useful to you as well. So, the American Fertility Association, originally an organization designed to help women who were struggling with infertility. But as time has gone on, we've really expanded our mission. And we have 4 primary goals right now. One of them remains infertility and helping those who are struggling with it, so those who are trying to conceive or trying to adopt. A second one would be male reproductive health, because we realize that the stats are about evenly split. About 40% of infertility, some issue with a woman, about 40% of infertility, some issue with a man, though it doesn't get much play, and the other 20% combined male factor and female factor. Unfortunately, in this area, about 90+% of the funding and the attention is focused on women, and men have pretty much been left out of the equation. It's unfortunate on a couple of levels, the most important one to me being the treatment aspect, and people not wanting to come forth and get into treatment and know that there are things that can be done for men as well as for women. So those are 2. A third one would be what we're doing today, and that's infertility prevention, and we've expanded that to include savvy treatment options. So it's great if we can prevent infertility in cases where we can, but if you're faced with some sort of difficulty conceiving, what are the savvy treatment options that are available to you? And the fourth thing is family building for the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community. Because we're an inclusive organization. We're the only fertility organization that is, and we're really proud of that. So trying to conceive or trying to adopt, men's reproductive health, infertility prevention, and family building for the LGBT community. And that's the work that we do. And we're here, obviously, today to talk about prevention and savvy treatment options. I want to introduce Corey Whalen. She's our program director at AFA, responsible for generating a huge portion of the materials and overseeing the generation of the other materials, and also helping to create a lot of the programming that we do. And I also want to introduce Bill Peacock, Dr. Bill Peacock. Just call me Bill. That's his tagline, actually. He's a clinical psychologist, practices here in the Baltimore area, an expert in the area of men's reproductive health, sexuality, and has been a great resource for the organization. We're really proud to have him on the board of directors, and he's here today to talk about some of the psychosocial implications around men's issues with reproductive health, as well as answer any of your questions and be a resource for you as well. So, Corey, do you want to make a few introductions?
Sure, I do. Actually, first thing I want to do is thank Lisa Drillard, because this concept really came out of Lisa's desire to push these messages out. If it wasn't for Lisa, we wouldn't be here, so Lisa, thank you so much. I'd like to introduce Karen Russ. Karen works with CHE, the Collaborative on Health and the Environment. And one of the things that we're very focused on at the American Fertility Association is the impact that environmental toxins have on reproductive health and also on babies and their health. So Karen's going to talk a little bit about that at some point during the presentation. Let me ask you guys something. How many women in the room see a gynecologist once a year as your doctor? Okay. Probably at this point in your life, your doctor is very focused on helping you guys prevent STDs and prevent pregnancy, if that's what's up for you. Did anybody's gynecologist ever talk about the biological clock to any of you? One. That, you know, it's the first time. we're usually 0 for 0. What did he or she say?
Well, about 20 years ago, for me, he basically said, you know, you're at that age where, you know, as women, before they hit 30, you know, it starts running out. And you start producing less eggs, there's a less chance of getting pregnant, the timing is a little bit harder. The things that you're eating, you know, start watching your weight, things like that. He was very focused on that, and at that time I was just getting married and thought I had plenty of time, so.
Wow. You see, we need to honor that Dr. Odegawa. Maybe the only gynecologist in the country that actually has that conversation with a woman under 30. It's really good news, and we hope that it represents the beginning of a change. But unfortunately, I don't know if that change will happen soon enough. Most women never really get accurate information about the biological clock until it's too late. At the American Fertility Association, we deal with the general public, and we get phone calls every day from women in their 40s who want to know if time is running out or if they can still take a year off. And it's very heartbreaking to have to tell these women that it's probably way past the time when they will be able to get pregnant with their own eggs. One of the reasons why it's so important to us to come to colleges, I found out I was infertile when I was 19. And the doctor who told me I would never be a mother never told me that there were things I could do in terms of my lifestyle that would make motherhood a reality. I did eventually have kids, but I had to spend almost $40,000 on in vitro fertilization to do it. The goal of us coming to colleges is for you to save that money and pay it for college tuition for the kids that you give birth to naturally through love. And you know what I like to say is one healthy baby at a time. We don't want you to get pregnant with a litter. It's not healthy for you or for the litter. We want you to be able to avoid the heartache of infertility completely, if that is at all possible.
Right, I was just going to say the other piece of that is that we've found out in talking at colleges that most people are focused on two things. One is career, and one is education. Am I going to get an advanced degree? If so, how far advanced am I going to go? Is it a master's? Is it a doctoral degree? Am I going to enter a partnership track at a law firm? Am I going to try to advance my career in some other way? And what we really want to do is introduce the third concept called family into that consideration. When you think about career and education, you have to start thinking family at the same time. Because unfortunately, particularly for women, the clock starts ticking rather early at around age
27.
Around 27 years old. So it's just something you need to factor in.
So there you go. And Ken's right. The first subtle dip in fertility will happen at around 27 or 28 for most women. A real cataclysmic jumping off the cliff is going to happen at around age 34, 35. And the sad truth is by 39, most women can't get pregnant on their own. A little bit of Clomid might help, some injected medications, in vitro fertilization. These will all help to extend that possibility. But again, it's not what we want. We don't want you to have to stimulate your ovaries. We want you to be able to avoid that if that is your choice. Now, you know, we're not telling anybody what to do. You can try to get pregnant whenever it is appropriate for you. However, you should be aware of your body's reality and then make a decision based on fact, not fairy tale. So you don't get blindsided. If becoming a mommy is one of your fondest dreams, we want you to do that as well as becoming a lawyer. That's all. And if it's not, you want to take it out of the equation, do so. But the number one thing is to be aware of biological clock. Then there are some other things. Some of you probably already have certain forms of infertility. There are disorder states called endometriosis, premature ovarian failure. We hate the word failure, but polycystic ovarian syndrome. These are all disease or disorder states which can't be avoided. However, they can be curtailed and possibly eliminated. One of the things that is very, very important, and often what's good for fertility also helps you avoid cancer, we want you to be aware of what you eat. We want you to be aware that your body needs to move. Healthy exercise, you hear it all the time in reference to a lot of things. It's true here too. Your body needs to be kept healthy in order to have a healthy pregnancy. Miscarriage, again, sugar early on in a pregnancy Not a good thing. You want to try to make those changes now when they have the most impact. So lifestyle changes are very important. Don't smoke. I'm sure you've heard that before. There's just no reason to smoke. Environmental toxins, very, very important. And I know that this is a place where people feel that they can't stop the tsunami because there's so much assault of toxins. And I'm going to let Karen talk about this, but she knows much more about this than I do, but I just want to talk about the toxic trio a little bit. Our first incarnation of talking to younger women about infertility prevention was an initiative called Manicures and Martinis. And we went all around the country and we would rent out a nail salon and we would bring in a doctor. We would treat women to a manicure and a martini, sometimes a pedicure, the lucky ones. And we would talk to them about infertility. We became very focused on the chemicals that are found in nail polish. And it became very important to us as we met more and more nail salon workers that we would only house these events in green nail salons. Before I turn the floor over to Karen, I want to make a request. Nail salons are toxic environments for the workers. If you go in for a manicure once a week, once a month, whatever, it's not the most horrible thing in the world. Yes, there's formaldehyde, there are phthalates, there's toluene, things we'd like you to try to avoid, but the women who work in the salons are literally working in factory conditions of toxicity. They're living in a toxic soup. They're an underserved population. Most of them are immigrants. They don't speak English very well. And my request of you as young women, don't go to those nail salons. Frequent green salons. If your salon is not a green salon, do what I did. I talked to the woman who owns the salon and I nag her incessantly to get greener. If we talk with our dollars, we protect an underserved population from infertility problems, reproductive health issues, the health of their infants, potential for cancer. It's not good for pregnant women to ever get a manicure with any kind of chemical, but I make that request of you because you're the generation of women that can really create this change. Now I'd like to bring Karen up to talk a little bit about toxicity. Thanks, Karen.
I'm going to bring a problem. So, it's nice to see you all here today. I have several roles right now. I am the working group coordinator for fertility and reproductive health at the Collaborative on Health and the Environment. I also teach in the nursing program at UMB, so if any of you are transferring, maybe I'll see you in the future. And so, kind of wearing that educator's hat, I'd love to know a little bit more about you. We just can take a couple minutes, because often I find people come to things like this because they have a burning question. So, do you mind just having like a sentence about what made you interested in coming today?
For me,
actually
it came from a conversation that Molly and I had, and I just simply asked the question, do you all ever get any questions about fertility or infertility over here at the Women's Center? And she was like, that's a great idea. I think we need to do something. So this kind of opened up. I am very passionate about the topic. I've also had firsthand knowledge. I have a 16-month-old now due to infertility treatment. And I just have a very strong passion to help other women. And I think this population, I think the young population, the youth, I never would have imagined at that age, and I wouldn't even have cared. I so commend you guys for being here because I wouldn't have, you would have said it could be a problem for you, and I would say, yeah, not me. I don't have endometriosis, I don't have any of these problems. I have a regular period, it's not me. So I think that just the awareness of it, I think that going to the OBGYN and asking the right questions and advocating for your own health are very important. So my hope for this today, and I also, I work here full time, nothing to do with health at all. I work in payroll. But I am also starting my own business, which is my passion, and that is relating to infertility. And it's, the name of it is My Hopeful Journey, and that is to help other women on their journey. So that's why I'm here, and I'm glad that we're videotaping because I think that we have the ability to reach so many more people than just this room. So my thought is that you all share this, share the link when the video comes out, and reach people that didn't feel comfortable coming in here. So that's the hope behind doing the video.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Hello. I haven't met you yet.
So I'm Molly, I'm the director here at the center, and just so grateful to Lisa for bringing up the idea of doing this program.
Mm-hmm.
And then also personally, I have a 2-year-old that took us a while though to actually conceive, and you know, I was sort of thinking that straight away, once we started trying, we would be able to conceive. I was 35 when I first started trying, and now I'm 38, and I'm still working on my dissertation, and I am, you know, sitting in this room going,
Yeah.
I need to get going.
Shock and awe.
I know. Yeah.
You know,
It's a lot to
so
consider.
so yeah.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that, everybody.
I'm sorry,
Oh.
can you also introduce
Sure.
Nikki, because she's here for a
hello.
different
Sorry.
reason.
Great.
Hi, I'm Nikki Aurora. I work at University Health Services. I'm the health educator there. And I am also a graduate student at the sociology department. And so I'm doing my qualitative research project on fertility awareness amongst undergraduate students. And I work with Lisa in some capacity, and we just started talking about this subject, and I thought it was so interesting, and that's kind of what inspired me to do this research project. And I was like, I think that would be a great topic to pursue. I'm personally interested in it as well. I never thought about it, just like she said, I'd never thought about it before, and she kind of plunked that in my little ear and said, maybe you should think about it. And I have brought it up with my own friends. I'm 24, and so I brought it up with my own friends, and all of us are kind of like, infertility, like we're trying not to get pregnant right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that, you know, would have ever crossed our minds had it not been brought up by somebody else. But it's good to know. I mean, you know, I don't plan to have kids for quite some time either, but it's good to know what steps I can take now to help me later on, because I do want to have a family. So,
And that's great to hear that perspective as well, because that's what I was imagining. You know, I always like to think about who's the audience and what kind of your interests. And I was thinking, gosh, when I was attending UMBC many years ago, the main focus was not trying to get pregnant. And so, yeah, many years later, it becomes a priority. But I think that it's great that you guys are here. You have a lot of forethought to try to consider all the aspects of your life, as you were saying. Yes. And so I'll be really brief. I brought some materials with me so that you can refer to these at a later time. But I basically wanted to send a message that, you know, many times when we think of infertility, the number one cause that pops into people's mind is in the medical field, I'm a registered nurse as well, we think of advanced maternal age, which is a wonderful little label that they put on women 35 and older. I will tell you that I have 3 children, and I was AMA for 2 of those 3 children. And so once women do become pregnant, often they have very healthy pregnancies, even in their later 30s. But it's the becoming pregnant that can be problematic. So while we think of later, an older mother, to use the term, as the one of the main causes of infertility, environmental factors are another big cause. And in recent years, we've seen that there's been young women 25 and younger are having a hard time getting pregnant, and the belief is that it's from environmental factors. So you think, well, what can we do about that? Because chemicals are all around us. The document that I brought here is put out by my organization, the Collaborative on Health and the Environment, as well as some partners, University of California at San Francisco and University of Florida. So it really does a nice summary, but basically there are some things in plastics. You've heard of BPA probably in the news, but also another chemical component, phthalates, which is we want to try to avoid. Also pesticides are a big problem. All of these things mimic the action of our natural hormones and can disrupt ovulation, can affect endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and then for the males, they can have an effect on sperm production as well. So, so I encourage. And exactly, and some of those chemicals are associated with birth defects as well. So I encourage you to read through this. And the other thing that I wanted to mention really quickly, you know, oftentimes people get overwhelmed by this information and think about, well, what actions can I possibly take? You're probably going to cover some of them. but I have 3 that I would like to suggest to you. When you're thinking about what personal care products you use, there's a great database called Skin Deep. Do you mention that in your talk? That'd be great.
No, please do, please do, please do.
The Environmental Working Group is a nonprofit that has done a lot of research on environmental exposures and human health.
It's ewg.org.
Exactly.
It's easy to remember.
Exactly. So if you go to ewg.org, they have 2 wonderful resources online. The first is a database called Skin Deep, where you can plug in the personal care products that you're using, and it will give you a report on what types of chemicals are in that product and the safety of that product. So ewg.org. Skin Deep is the database, and the other really great, quick and handy reference they have is called the Dirty Dozen. They are referring to the amount of pesticide residue that is on the produce that we buy. Certainly, if we were all able to buy organic produce without pesticides, that would be ideal, but not everyone is able to do that. So if you look on ewg.org, put in a little search for the Dirty Dozen, it gives you the list of the produce that would contain the most pesticide residue, and those are the items that you want to avoid if you can. So,
Karen, I just want to ask you a quick thing. Besides this great information, can you just talk briefly about the work that you guys are doing to advance awareness and to create change?
Yes,
Thanks.
thank you. Thank you very much. If you'd like to come to the website, I've left my card there. I am heading up a working group, and that is a conglomeration of scientists, researchers, doctors, nurses, advocates like American Fertility Association, and also patients and people who feel like they've been affected by environmental exposures. So we come together in an online presence. We have a listserv where I send out messages, you know, periodically as news items come out about chemicals that may affect people's fertility. I send out a monthly newsletter on those types of news announcements. So if you would like to receive those monthly, you can shoot me an email, let me know. And then periodically we have teleconferences, we have webinars with nationally known experts in the field. Yeah, so I was just sharing with the doctor that tomorrow I'm hosting one on the effects of BPA on in vitro fertilization. Because in fact there's been a lot of animal data over the last decade that says BPA has a negative effect on egg quality in animals. And then in 2010 there were 2 studies that supported that in humans. So so it's really great information, and I'd like to invite you all to join in.
Karen, let me ask you a question, because
Sure.
we always tell people not to heat up food with plastic.
Oh, yes.
How do you feel about that?
Oh, yes, I thank you very much for getting some more concrete recommendations. Plastics can, and you've probably heard some of this in the news, but I will just repeat, it bears repeating. Plastics can let chemicals out of their internal structure and into the food and drink that we're taking in. So I do recommend that people microwave only in glass.
Yeah, we do too.
Yeah.
I think it's very important. And I also want you guys to be aware, if you get soup from a takeout place in a plastic container, that's boiling liquid in a plastic container. And those plastic containers tend not to have the code on the bottom. I don't remember the codes by heart, but in that book that we gave out, we tell you which codes to look for, which are safer. I don't say safe anymore. Safer than others. The ones
1, 2, or 5.
1, 2, or 5 are okay.
Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of times in Chinese restaurant, there'll be a 7 with like a cross or a bow and, you know, like a skull on the bottom. They're bad for you, but they're pouring soup into that, and then whatever is in the plastic is now in your soup and is now in your body. And the body tends to not get rid of these residues. So, I mean, if you test the placenta when babies are born, it's full of chemicals. So what is in you is in your baby. So, you know, that's a big one for us. Mercury and it's smart for you to be aware of that. Also in that booklet, there's a section on mercury that lists some fish which are better than others. Such a shame that the healthiest food on the planet has become one of the unhealthiest foods on the planet. The CDC has the best fact sheet that I've read on mercury and guidelines for it. So I urge you to take a look at that. This is good action stuff, so thank you. I really, really do appreciate it.
Sure, and I'll be happy to talk with anyone and answer
Oh, yeah,
questions later.
stay, of course. One thing we haven't touched upon in great detail is condoms and voids. And the two go together. The two go together.
Sure. So let's just talk briefly about some issues around male factor. As Corey was pointing out, with women, things are fairly well defined. The first initial drop in fertility around 27, and then a significant drop around 34, 35, and potential end game around 40 or so. It's fairly clear cut. There are things that you can do to help yourself along the way. Obviously, a lot of the things we just talked about, environmental concerns, avoiding toxins, good health, nutrition, all those things can help make that time as full as possible and keep your fertility as high as possible. But women, start with a set number of eggs, and you just continually lose them over time.
And you lose the best ones first.
And then the quality just degrades.
Yeah.
Guys have it a little bit easier, in a lot of ways, I suppose. And thank you, Bill, for getting the joke. Guys have it a little bit easier in that we don't have a biological clock that ticks at that same rate. And really, for the biological clock for men, though we look at age as one of the factors, because when we pass 35, some changes start to happen. And we start to lose, particularly around testosterone, we start to lose about 1% per year in terms of testosterone. Why that matters is if we live on average to be 75 and you look at a 1% loss, men are losing about 45% of their testosterone over time. So it's actually a significant thing. But we look at 4 different factors. We look at semen, at sperm, at testosterone, and at erections. Because, without an erection, it's just not going to happen. And there are things that affect that. In all seriousness, the things that Corey talked about, the things that we've heard about, are things that can affect erections as well. So let's start there. Smoking, obesity, the use of recreational drugs, all of these things have a real effect on a man's ability to get an erection. The use of non-recreational drugs but non-prescribed anabolic steroids can also have a huge effect. The opposite and ironic effect of actually slowing down and sometimes halting the production of the body's own testosterone, and the atrophy of the testicles, and in some cases, a complete shutdown of testicular activity in extreme cases. So, there are things, if you hear in this, what I want you to hear in this is the avoidability of these things. You don't have to smoke, you don't have to do anabolic steroids. You can make healthy choices around what you eat, what you put in your body. You can exercise. All those different things play an important role. Let's talk about those other 3 factors just briefly. Semen, the milky fluid that should shoot out of the penis during an ejaculation that's a great sign of the health of what's going on. An incredibly complex substance. There are books written just about the chemical properties of semen, but the bottom line is it keeps sperm alive outside of a man's body. It protects the sperm against the chemical environment of the vagina, which is actually not hospitable to sperm alone. And about a teaspoon is a normal amount of ejaculate in terms of semen. Number of sperm contained in that, on average, about 250 million. So it's a significant number. Now, the interesting thing to me is if you took one of those microscopic cells of microscopic sperm and increased it to the size of a human being, it would be the equivalent of a man running 3 miles. That's the distance that a sperm has to travel from the back of the vagina where it's deposited to a fallopian tube to an egg to fertilize it. It's a 3-mile run.
It has to be a healthy sperm.
It's got to be healthy sperm, and that's exactly the point. So there's 2 factors we look for around sperm. One is its motility, its ability to swim, to move. The other is morphology, and that's its shape. Misshapen sperm, generally an indicator of genetic defects within the sperm. We mentioned testosterone, yes, we talked about that, we talked about erections. So those are really the four things. And I bring this up because if you're in a relationship or you're seeing someone or you're married and you're trying to get pregnant, male factor is an incredibly important piece. And sadly, the number of men who don't even get a basic sperm count, let alone a full workup, is really high. That's why it's so impressive that a gynecologist would talk about biological clock. A gynecologist should also be asking, well, have we, seen a urologist, or even more specifically, a reproductive urologist, so your husband or your partner can get a complete workup and make sure we know what's going on the male factor side of things. Remember, it's an equal amount of contribution to the infertility problem.
And let me throw something
Yeah,
in on
please.
that. Now,
Actually, Bill, why don't you come on up here, because I want you to talk about some other things too.
it's an equal contribution, but it's a whole lot cheaper for a guy to have a semen analysis than it is for a woman to have an infertility workup. And the first thing an OBGYN ought to be doing is suggesting that your male partner have a semen analysis if you are having difficulty conceiving. Because for a small amount of money, you can either verify that there's no problem or find out that there is some problem that may need to be addressed, which may be exclusive to the problem or maybe in addition to some other female factor issue. So that's a real inexpensive way to start doing an analysis. Sadly, many OBGYNs do not suggest this first.
And I wanted you to talk actually about psychosocial factors and psychological factors for men in facing the possibility of infertility and why that can be a barrier to treatment.
We're all afraid of it and we don't know it. And we, of course, don't talk about it. Ken mentioned earlier that about 90% of the activity in awareness and prevention comes on the female side of things. And I think there are a variety of reasons for this, not the least of which is that women are more willing to talk about these things, and women are more actively involved in reproductive health care. Most of you see a gynecologist on a regular basis, and started doing that at a fairly young age, sometime in your teens in all likelihood. Men never see a reproductive specialist on a regular basis because that's not part of their physiology and anatomy. In fact, what they find out at a young age is, okay, I know what I need to do with that when the time is right. And, as many women do, try to avoid getting pregnant because they're not interested in becoming fathers at young ages. But they are just as much in need of aware of environmental factors, aware of what they can do to preserve or prevent infertility problems. But we don't live in a culture that has an awful lot to do with men talking about how they feel about things. If we were to do this talk in a non-women's center on a college campus, about 95% of those in attendance would be women, and about, if we're lucky, 5% would be men. Because it would be unseemly to show up and to talk about this. Most of you can name 3 women who have had fertility problems who are bigger than life. They would start with Celine Dion, give me 2 more. Joan London, babies at age 52, not her own eggs. Marcia Cross, third one.
Rachel Zoe.
Rachel Zoe. I challenge you to name me a man who is big in the...
Who told? Tom Cruise? Oh, wait, no, he didn't.
Guys don't talk about this stuff. And part of it has to do with some very old historical stuff about where fertility was located. It's all in the woman, it's not in the man. The impropriety in certain cultures of having male factor fertility. There are certain cultures still, if there's an infertility problem, it's grounds for a man to get divorced, even if he has male factor, because his wife can't produce a child for him. Of course, no woman can produce a child for him.
If you think that your partner can get you pregnant because he has a child already, it's not necessarily true. Male fertility really is subject to a lot of the environmental factors as well as age. Well water can affect a man's sperm count, so can lead. a number of other environmental toxins. And getting back to age for 1 second, I just wanted to make sure.
We should talk about age in men.
As men get older, I had lunch with a urologist last week, and his wife is a special ed teacher. She said when she sees a kid come into the school with really bad learning disabilities, she tosses a quarter, most likely he's gonna have a dad over 45. As men get older, even if they father a child, IQ rates often go down, autism rates spike, Down syndrome spikes, a number of other learning disabilities seemed to be equated with advanced paternal, not maternal age.
There's a fair amount of research which supports this. There's something called microdeletion, and these are changes on the face of a gene, and with age they increase in men, and so you get all of the kinds of problems that Corey was talking about. There shouldn't be a good reason why men don't want to talk about this sort of thing, because when you look at the research on men and their concerns about raising families, it's about the same as with women. Unfortunately, the culture doesn't support talking about that. But when we do work with men who are having fertility problems, you find that the single largest source of support they get is from other people. They just don't sit down in groups like this and talk about it. It tends to be more one-on-one kinds of interaction. But they do search for that kind of support. An environmental toxin we haven't talked about that I want to mention is alcohol. It's out there in the environment. I'm not talking about rubbing the alcohol. I'm talking about the kind you put in your body, both men and women. Alcohol does not promote healthy babies in excess. It might contribute a little bit to making babies, but in small amounts.
A glass of nice red wine.
Right.
There's an interesting story that I think illustrates what Bill was talking about with men. We had a construction worker at our house come in to get his check the day he was completed, and there's a directory called the ART Success Rates Report put out by the CDC.
Assisted reproductive technology.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's a Bible. It's like all of these listings of clinics throughout the country and what percentage they had of people getting pregnant. And he looked at that and says, I know that book. And I thought, okay. And he just stood there and I said, would you like to sit down and talk? And he said, yes. And he said, my wife and I have been trying to get pregnant for 2 years. She is so distraught about it, I don't feel I can talk to her because I don't want to cause more pain for her. I tried telling one of my friends, he told me I'm a fag, quote unquote. And he goes, he said it jokingly, but I got the message. We don't talk about this. Guys don't talk about this because my sexuality and masculinity are now called into question. He said, my dad told me when I was getting married, I had 2 things to do in life. One was to get married, and the other was to father children. And he goes, now I failed at one of the 2 things my dad told me I needed to do. And he said, so I can't go talk to my dad about this. And I was one of the first and few people he had actually had a conversation with in 2 years about what he was going through. Didn't know where to turn, didn't know what to do, where to go, how to even approach the subject. So it's very real, in real time right now. There's that quandary and all the things that Bill brought up, societal stuff at play. And it got played out in my office that afternoon. I was glad I was there, I was glad the book was out, and I had an opportunity to chat with him. But I suspect that is repeated across the country countless times with guys not having a resource to go to.
Right, we see it in the office all the time. A guy would come in and not have been able to talk about it with anybody else. You don't sit down with your buddies and say, my sperm count is low and my morphology is not very good, and I've had some testicular atrophy, because now you're all the things that Ken mentioned and worse. And sometimes it's just bad luck.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just bad luck. It's nothing you did. And it is
Nothing else.
And there is a difference. I mean, masculinity is tied up in testosterone and erections and producing an adequate ejaculate, although no man ever knows if his ejaculate is adequate until he has it tested. And being a woman, femininity is tied up in many times in mothering and nurturing and those kinds of things. So we don't see men as nurturers, but indeed they can be very good nurturers. It's just not fostered in a public way in men.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Just want to mention condoms and
I
STDs
do.
and their effect.
We're gonna talk about that.
And the questions.
Two things, and then we're gonna talk about STD prevention. I want all of you to be aware that there is a blood test you can take called an FSH test, also anti-Mullerian hormone, AMW. These tests, simple blood draw, will let you know a lot about your egg quality and quantity. So be aware of that test, and if you find that you're looking to get pregnant, you're 29 or above, make sure that your doctor gives you this simple blood test. If your doctor doesn't talk to you about the blood test, you're seeing the wrong doctor. A gynecologist is not a specialist. A reproductive endocrinologist is a specialist. There's so much to talk about, and we don't have a whole lot of time. STD prevention. Tubal factor infertility accounts for about 25% of infertility in this country. 24% of it can be avoided completely. If you use condoms when you're not trying to get pregnant, you will avoid getting chlamydia, you will avoid getting gonorrhea, HPV, host of other sexually transmitted diseases and infections. Very important to be aware of, it's no lie. Chlamydia is asymptomatic 99% of the time, expresses itself with no pain whatsoever. Gonorrhea, about 60% of the time, will be completely asymptomatic. These diseases, if not treated, will sterilize you. It's the only time I use the word sterilize. It will be the equivalent of tying your tubes. And it's not necessary. So really, use a condom, please, until it's time to have a baby. There's a lot to talk about. We're out
So
of
we should
time.
we should just say two things about condom. And we all know this, but we'll say it anyway. Latex condom with a non-petroleum-based lubricant if you're going to use a lubricant.
What he
so
said.
just those two key factors. So, any questions that we can answer? I think we're about 6-7 minutes before the hour. Anything we can answer, we'd be happy to.
I guess just to add to the latex condom with petroleum, that was one factor later in life I actually found out doesn't apply to me, especially not having tubes and with my husband and stuff, but I found out I'm allergic to mineral oil and partially allergic to latex. So you got, if you know, for the men, that's another thing to kind of let them know is if you're allergic to latex, let them know, find another alternative.
Yeah, there you go.
So.
It's an alternative. Thank you for that. Appreciate that.
Thank you, too. Any questions?
There's a ton of material.
Yeah.
Please feel free to take extra copies of anything and distribute
we're
it as
available
necessary.
at any time. I'm going to get out some of my cards. Ken and I can't hide. We're
No,
reachable, so.
sadly. Cell phone, email, text.
Again, Lisa, I really want to thank you so much for creating this.
And thanks for all of you for taking your lunch hour out. We really appreciate it.
Awesome.
This was informative.